Okay, this is an interview with Leslie A. Warner, Beltron Living Center, Colonie, New York, the 6th of August 2003, approximately 9:20 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Okay, could you give us your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Leslie Arthur Warner, April 3rd, 1917, Kensington, Connecticut.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
High school graduate.
Okay. Now, I see you entered in June of 41. Were you drafted, or
I was
did you
drafted
enlist?
June 6, 1941 for 1 year.
Okay. Where did you go for basic training?
I went to Fort Devens for 2 weeks for tests and all that sort of stuff, and outfit, uniform. Then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for 3 months. And from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I went to Madison Barracks, New York, which is an old Army post from Civil War days, I guess. And I joined the 258th Field Artillery Regiment, which was a New York City National Guard outfit. And I believe it was President Washington's color guard for his first inaugural in New York City.
Okay. Now, you were obviously in the service when you heard about Pearl Harbor. Do you remember where you were, how you heard, and what your reaction was?
We were at Madison Barracks, New York. Matter of fact, I was home to Connecticut on a leave, and they called us to come back right away. I got back to Madison Barracks outside of Watertown at 5 o'clock in the morning, and at 7 o'clock we were on the trucks going to Buffalo to guard the bridges and industries out there. For some reason or other, they assumed there was going to be German submarines going up St. Lawrence River and shelling the industries in Buffalo. So that's where we were.
So I noticed
It was
you
quite a
guarded,
shock.
I know in your form you said you guarded a bridge in Buffalo. Was the Peace Bridge to Canada? Or?
We had all the bridges over the waterways that we had to
Okay.
patrol.
How long were you there?
December 7th, it must have been the middle of January when they finally let us go back.
Now, were you given weapons and so on? To
All we had was the old Springfield rifles from World War I.
Did they give you ammunition or no?
Yeah, we had shells, old shell. What we're going to do with them, I don't know, but we had shells.
Now, did you have artillery pieces with you too, or just?
We left those at Madison
One
Barracks.
is okay. What kind of weapons did you train on up at Madison? Artillery pieces.
At Madison Barracks?
Yes.
We had the 155 long Tom howitzer.
Now, were they?
And we had to use Pine Camp to shoot those.
Were they World War I vintage, or
No,
were
no,
they
these were all new
ones? Okay.
weapons, yeah.
How were they towed in
Trucks.
trucks? Okay. I know we've ran into some that used the old World War I, and one actually was towed by horses.
No, we had old trucks.
Okay. After you left, or after you left the Buffalo area, where did you go back?
We went back to Madison Barracks, and then eventually, after training for I don't know how long, the major decided I ought to go to OCS. So I ended up at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in OCS for 3 months.
Okay. What kind of extra courses and so on did they give you there?
Well, that was all gunnery school, and then I went back 6 months later and spent a month at survey school to survey artillery pieces in, and that's about it.
All right. After you left OCS.
Then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for I think it was a period of 6 weeks until they decide what they're going to do with us. And myself and I think there's about 15 other officers that just graduated went to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin to form the 277th Field Artillery Battalion, which we did with draftees right off the streets, and we give them basic training and so forth, and we ended up with 105 howitzers.
Okay. Where did your unit go after they completed their basic training?
Well, after we got through 3 months of basic training, we ended up in North Dakota picking wheat, believe it or not. With 4,000 other troops, we saved the wheat crop by getting it up off the ground and shucking it because they had no help. So we did that for probably 6-7 weeks, and then we went back to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin. And about a month after that, we got orders to go to Fort Riley, Kansas to fire live ammunition over the Tank Corps training grounds.
Okay. when did you end up going overseas?
We went overseas in July of '44. They didn't want us over there too soon because they were afraid of putting our big guns on shore without a big beachhead. So we ended up going into France in August, first week in August.
Okay, when you went over, did you go over in a convoy or single ship? Or?
We went over on the Queen Mary with 16,000 replacement troops. We were the only outfit on board, so we became the MPs on board, and we went across in 4.5 days to Scotland.
Did all your field artillery equipment and everything on board, or did that go?
No, it was all on freighters. At that time, we had converted, when I was at Fort Bragg, before we went to the port of embarkation, we converted to a 240 millimeter howitzer, which is the largest land gun at that time we had. So that was all on freighters coming over because they just got through manufacturing it.
How did you compare it to the 105?
Oh, there's no comparison. 105 is like a pea shooter compared to the 240. The 240 fired a shell that was 3 foot long, weighed 380 pounds, and it took an 88-pound bag of ammunition or gunpowder to fire it. So I say 105 is a pea shooter compared to the 240. And we could fire a distance of 16 miles with a 240 and do a lot of damage.
Now, how was a shell that heavy loaded into it? Did a single person load
No,
it
we
in?
had a 4-man tray, and there was a tray to put it on, and the 4 men put it in, and then the rest of the gun crew pushed the powder in behind it, all manual power, and shut the breech.
Okay. In August of '44, then you went into France. Where did you go? What army were you assigned to?
We went into Utah Beach, and were sent down the coast a little way, and we assigned to the 3rd Army that was just being formed. At that point, the 3rd Army was being activated for duty over in France. So we stayed with the 3rd Army through the whole war as a separate artillery battalion.
Did you ever get to see Patton
I'm
himself?
afraid I got hell from him 3 times.
Really? Can you tell about that?
It wasn't my fault, but I happened to be there. I was the only officer there. So, let's see, the first time was we were down below Metz, and it was November, muddier than the dickens, and the colonel told me to put my guns over there. I said, that's impossible, Colonel. That field is mined, and the mud is 2 foot thick. And if I get 240 howitzer in there with our tractor, the tractor weighed 38 tons, so we'll never get out of there. So he said, all right. He said, put it in the middle of this road over here. So I put it in the middle of the road, and sure enough, Pat come along, wanted to know what the hell I was doing, and told me in no uncertain terms to get somebody to get me out of there. So he did, and then during the Battle of the Bulge, he declared one road going north to be a one-way highway, what he called a Red Ball Express. And we happened to come along, and they told us to put our guns in reserve over here in this field. It was a slope field, and the tractor on my number 2 gun couldn't quite get off the road, and there was probably 6 foot of tube sticking out in the highway, and he didn't want that highway blocked. So sure enough, he comes along with his convoy of jeeps, and what are you doing? And I told him, I said, I'm having trouble getting this thing off the road. I said, the 38-ton tractor is pulling this. It was a carriage of the gun was 17 tons. And was trying to pull it off, and I have a 4.5-ton truck tied to the tractor in front to try to give it a little more steering power. He said, well, he said, Lieutenant, he says, if you can't get that damn thing off of here in an hour, he says, get a hacksaw and saw it off. Yes, sir. And off he went. Then the 3rd time, it was near the end of the war, and I was flying liaison with my Piper Cub to the 3rd Army headquarters. And I was coming to the headquarters, and there was a young fellow stopped with a telephone truck from the Signal Corps. He was stuck in the mud. So I got out to see if I could help the kid, and I told him I'd go to headquarters and get a truck to come down and get him. And Patton came along about that time, and he said, you again? So I explained to him what happened. And then he went over to the kid, and he gave that kid a heck. Boy, he really laced into him. I dragged you 3,000 miles across the ocean, and you stick it in the mud. Get that thing out of here. Off he goes.
So you were on almost a first name
Yeah,
basis with him.
How did you feel about him as a general?
I thought he was terrific. I thought he was terrific.
Okay.
He sounded like he was very hard-hearted. He acted that way, but he had a little common sense to it too. I thought he was terrific.
Okay. All right, so could you tell us about your combat experience then in,
Well, as I said, we went across France very fast. And as a battalion, we were assigned to different corps to support them. We were assigned to 3rd Army Artillery. We supported the 5th Corps, the 20th Corps, the 12th Corps, and then the Corps in turn would send us to certain division areas where they had troubles. So we supported the 5th Infantry Division, we supported going to the Battle of Bulge, we supported the 4th Armored Division. The 5th Infantry was at Metz, and each time we went somewhere it was a different division, so we had all kind of experiences firing at all kind of targets. And as I say, I was an observer in an artillery cub. I flew over 200 missions in a Piper Cub, and we just fired at anything we could make it worthwhile. Any big targets, we did it with. One time at Metz, we fired at a church. We had to get permission from 3rd Army to destroy this old French church because there was 2 machine guns that were wiping out. The 5th Division was putting a pontoon bridge across the Moselle River, and every time they put 5 or 6 pontoons out, the machine guns on the church would open fire. And then around the city of Metz, there was a system of forts. And Fort Driant was just to the north of us. And they had disappearing guns, 75 howitzers or 88, I can't remember what they were now, but they'd fire, and these poor kids are trying to get this pontoon bridge. So it took about a month before the Army realized that we could go down south about 10 miles and get across the Moselle River without all this nonsense. But we did things like that. We had to get permission from the 3rd Army to destroy that church because the 2 machine gun nests were up on top of it. And things of that nature. And we destroyed, I don't know how many, we destroyed tank groups that were running around. Every time we saw 10 or 12 tank. When I was in my Piper Cub, I could spot these guys. The Germans very, very seldom fired their artillery during the day because their powder was so strong and created such a flash that if we spot it, well, we could destroy it right there. But we did a lot of damage. Matter of fact, from September till probably March, we fired an average of 1,000 rounds a month of this huge artillery shell. So we did a lot of damage.
What did you think of the Piper Cub?
Pardon?
What did you think of the Piper Cub?
Oh, I loved that little thing.
Did you fly it all yourself?
Once or twice.
Uh-huh.
I was the artillery observer. We had a regular pilot, but my pilot got drunk one day at one of the Air Force bases. We went back for a piece of equipment for the Piper Cub. He had too much champagne and steak for dinner. So he got the plane off the ground, and all of a sudden he said, "Hey, let's take over." I said, "Oh, man." So I flew all the way back to our base. I said, "Well, you better help me get down." So we got down, but I flew it about 3 times. But I loved that little ship.
now your weapons were towed by a special tractor?
We had a special 38-ton tractor. It was powered by 2 Rolls-Royce engines and burned 3 gallons of gas to go 1 mile. Matter of fact, it was so big, the track on it was 21 inches. We went across a pontoon bridge, it just fit in the track. We didn't have to steer it. It carried a 16-man gun crew. We had 2 seats, eight to house our gun crew. And it carried, I think we had 50 rounds of ammunition in the back of it. Plus we had a special carrier for extra ammunition that another tractor pulled. The gun came in 2 pieces, a 17-ton carriage and a 16-ton tube. So we had 2 tractors, 1 for each piece, to each gun.
How many guns in your battery?
2. 240s there was 2. 105s there was 4. And 155s there was 4.
How did you keep up with the front? How fast did these tractors move?
Oh, they traveled as fast as you wanted to.
They did.
As a matter of fact, when the Battle of Bulge happened, we were down south of France, near Strasbourg, and General Patton told Eisenhower that we'll be there in 24 hours. And Eisenhower said, "You're crazy, you can't do that in 24 hours. We were there in 24 hours. I don't know why, but we were.
Now, did you have winter equipment?
Oh, yeah. Yep. We didn't get boots till the last minute, but we got enough winter equipment, yep.
What was your mission in the Bulge?
We went up to support the 4th Armored Division, and we were closing off the southern flank of the Bulge. And we were going into Bastogne to close it off. So we ended up in Bastogne.
Now you then went all the way across,
Then we came back south again to where we were and went across the southern part of Germany into Bavaria.
were you aware of any of the concentration camps?
Oh, yes, yes. Matter of fact, I got a picture somewhere. I went in, one of them was General Patton, and he insisted that we take all the people from the nearest town and walk through there to show them what they did. And of course, they claimed they didn't know it was there. So, but I went through there, and another case we went to near the end of the war again. We put our guns in storage. This is probably late April, and we went to they gave us a sector, 10 miles square, something like that, to patrol and check out. And we found this camp, a small, very small POW camp, and I think we had about 50 American and English officers in there. So weak from malnutrition they couldn't get up off their cots. And the two German colonels were there. They were probably 7 years old, and all the troops had run away, so there was nobody there but those guys. So we got an ambulance and took all these guys away, and the two German colonels wanted to ride home. I said, no, you walk home. You know where you live, walk. So, because we had no way to transport these guys. And we didn't want to take them prisoner because we had no place to put them.
What was your, do you remember where you were and your reaction when President Roosevelt died?
No, I have no idea where I was. I know it was horrible when we finally got the news, but I didn't know where he was.
How did you feel about the death of Patton?
I thought it was a shame that that guy should die like that, but I don't know what the real story was behind it. I don't think it was true all the way through. Something funny there.
Were you in the occupation force at all, or?
No, I didn't stay very long. Let's see, the war ended in May, and I got orders to report to Marseille to fly back over to the States. But at that time, they were having an awful lot of storms. They were losing a lot of planes, so I ended up staying at Marseille for, I guess I must have been there about 6 weeks. Finally, I got orders again. The Japanese war was ending about that time, and I got another set of orders to get on the first Army transport going back to the States, and I ended up on an Army transport called the David Shanks, and went back to New York. And originally, my order called for me to get back to Washington and go from Washington to Fort Sill for another month of training to go to the Far East as an artillery observer. Then the war ended, so they just changed all my orders, and I ended up getting out of service in November '45.
So what was your reaction to the bombs dropping in Pearl Harbor? Or Japan, I'm sorry.
Well, I was glad to see it happen to the end of war, but it's a horrific thing to see, I suppose.
Yes. Okay. When were you discharged?
November 1945, I was released.
Now, I noticed you said you were called up for Korea.
Yeah, I stayed in the inactive reserve, and that was quite a shock to me when they called me in, but I never got to Korea. The artillery board kept saying, oh, it's not your turn yet, not your turn, so I never got there.
Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
Yes, I bought my home.
How about the 5220 Club?
No, I went right to work when I got out.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, I belong to the American Legion of VFW.
Okay. How about staying in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
Oh yes, we have matter of fact, there's a reunion 1st of September out in Ohio in my 277th Field Artillery Battalion. It's the only thing I know because that's the only outfit I was ever in, the 277th. But they have a reunion, enlisted men have a reunion every year now, what there is left of them. We used to have a reunion of the officers every 2 years, but myself and one other guy are the only two left, the 27 officers. So, but we used to meet every 2 years somewhere in California, Colorado, North Carolina, Delaware. Have reunions every 2 years, weekends, and we stayed together we were a very close-knit outfit. So.
Okay. How do you think your time in the military service affected or changed your life?
I don't think it changed anything. I think I became more confident in myself, but outside of that, I don't think it did much for me. As I say, I was very, very fortunate. I got through the whole thing without getting scratched or getting hurt in any way. We crashed in our Piper Cub twice, but only got bruised and knocked around a little bit.
Now, I noticed you received a Bronze Star. What was that awarded for?
Oh, they called it heroism in ground combat. New Year's Day of 45, we got caught and got shelled very badly by a group of 88 self-propelled tanks. And I think they fired about 50 rounds. I lost 6 men that day, 4 were killed and 2 were wounded. And when we got those straightened out, I went out to the field and they were using an awful lot of duds, these slave workers that the Germans had working and all are used to sabotage an awful lot of stuff. So I knew there was 3 rounds that came very close to us that didn't go off. So I grabbed my survey sergeant, we went out, and I found one of the holes. We measured the depth of the shell and the angle it went in the ground, and we pulled the shell out because, as I say, it was a dud, and I found out what kind of a shell it was. I called my fire direction center, told them all the information. After we got the kids off the field and into the hospital, I called my pilot and said, can you go up this morning? It was a terrible morning. I said, can we get up for a little while? He says, sure, come on, get over here. So I got my Jeep, went to the field and got in the Piper Cub and called the fire direction center on my radio and asked them what they found out. And they told me exactly where the guns were. From the information I gave them, they back-checked it and found out where those guns came from, roughly. So we went up and flew around for about a half hour, and I found them about 10 miles away. And we got them. Got a covey of 6 tanks. So.
Do you have any other stories you want to tell us, or?
No, I talk too much as it is.
Okay, well, how about some of your photographs then?
Well, you can look at those and see what you think is interesting. Oof. As I say, my granddaughter wanted all these.
Well, why don't you, while I'm looking at these, why don't you hold these up in front of yourself, sitting down there, and tell Wayne when each one of those was taken. He can focus on them.
Well, this one here, we were in the Battle of the Bulge. I don't know where it was now. Around Metz in 1944,
Okay,
probably in October.
all right, got it.
And these 2 were taken near the end of the war when they gave me a pass to go back to Paris to straighten out our postal situation. We weren't getting our mail.
Okay, got it.
And this is the same thing. It was on the road to Paris to get our APO straightened out.
Okay, got it.
Well, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, he was in the service when I was an enlisted man. I can't remember his name now, but
I'm gonna hold. I'll hold some of these up there.
he used to say, "Here, Philip Morris," or something, or like, "Here comes Johnny from Philip Morris." I can't remember what his slogan was now, but he and I were bunkmates at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Now, okay. Let me get the pictures next to it. Those are you also?
Oh, I think this is some.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
looks like it.
Okay.
I know you had some.
This is all the first outfit I was in. That's a 155 gun.
What's that gun at the top? That looks,
That's another 155 Howitzer,
Okay.
different position.
alrighty.
No, what is this your
That's
unit?
all the when I was in OCS. No, that's officer school. We got all candidates.
Now, when was that taken?
We had it probably 1943.
Whereabouts are you in there?
Beats me. Let's see, this is class 48. I don't see myself. Matter of fact, I don't think I graduated like that. I think I graduated with another class because I was dumb. I didn't pass the first first 3 weeks of test.
Let me get a shot at that.
When was that taken?
That was taken right after graduate officer school in 1943.
Okay.
This is a great album. See if I can find your 240 millimeter.
Oh, that's way in the back.
Oh, here's a good shot.
Here's my Piper Cub.
Is that you next to it or the pilot?
That's the pilot.
What was his name?
John Geraltz.
Yes,
Call
he's-
him Ace.
Is he still living?
No,
or-
he died just last November from
Okay.
cancer bladder. He was a crop duster. His family owned a farm out in Indiana, Illinois. He used to fly a crop. He was a terrific pilot. That's when we started having our union 25 years after we left. In the back of the book I have that's an old, long Tom. Somewhere in there I got pictures of the guys putting the gun together. Probably not very clear. See, this is the crane we used to put the gun together. I don't know if there's any. Here's a tube here, one of the tubes.
No, this would be the tractor that,
Yeah, those are the
And
tractors,
there's
that's
the-
the carriage.
how long did it take to assemble the gun?
Oh, we get one of them together in about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Finish the 2 pages.
Okay, got it.
Now, with the 2 guns, how many enlisted men and how many officers were there in the unit?
Well, each battery had 4 officers and 115 men. Battalion had 550 men altogether.
This shows the tractor again here. So you had a tractor with the tube, a tractor with the carriage,
And a
and then
tractor for the ammunition carrier.
and then the crane was on a truck?
The crane was on a truck body.
Okay.
We used that crane to dig the pits for the guns, recoil mechanisms.
Yeah.
Those are all souvenir shots of Eagle's Nest. There's an Eagle's Nest here. Up there,
Yes.
down in the area, Birch's Garden.
You didn't get a close-up of Patton with you
No,
and he together?
that camera can take all these pictures with
Yes.
lousy pictures they are.
Zoom right
starters
in
they
on
are.
them.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. That's a great album.
Yeah, as I say, the kids wanted it. I said, well, I'll put it together from what I remember.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm getting a little glare. Can you hold it like maybe straighter? Yeah, that's better. All right, that's a great parting shot. Okay, thanks.
He got a call near the end of the war. He got a call from a friend of his. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the Libizan stallions.
Yes.
40 of my men and myself went with these guys to rescue as many as we could and bring them back to Germany from outskirts of Vienna, outskirts of. So that was quite an experience for the kids. I'd say most of the kids we had were 19, 20-year-old draftees out of Indiana and Illinois and Kentucky. So they got quite a kick out of that.
So you were with the unit that went out?
Yeah, myself and 40
Could
of
you
my 40 boys.
tell us about that?
Well, it was just a big ride. We took a ride to that area and some of the kids rode the horses and some of them just led the horses, and we put some in trucks that we could get in trucks. And it was quite an adventure. We only had one little problem. We had a firefight with some Germans, but we had a patrol with us to take care of us. Here's a picture of the... When I first got to Albany, they had the show over in Troy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another experience we had outside of using the guns.
Okay.
Helped guard a prisoner, not a prisoner of war camp, but a camp that had all the slave laborers, refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And we were supposed to keep them in the pen. We had a detained, not a detainee, but a group of German prisoners that were acting as our, what'd you call them? They took care of us, our valets or whatever I call them. They sewed the uniforms and they cleaned the uniforms, cleaned shoes, and I think there was about 50 officers from the different outfits. And they, this one guy, he begged me to find some oil paint. He was a good artist. I just watch him sometimes. He had a charcoal sketch. And one day he made a charcoal sketch of me when I was sitting there in a room. And he asked me to go get him some paints. So I got him paints. And this guy painted this portrait of me.
Can you hold that up and I'll
And
get a shot of it?
I gave him my pup tent. So he did this on the back of my pup tent I gave him. He made two paintings. This one and one of a bunch of rabbits running up a hillside for my little daughter. I just had a baby girl. And
Okay.
You have that portrait at home?
yeah,
Oh,
it's been sitting
So
on
for canvas, it was done on a
the back of a pup tent. Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So I went out and got him, and then he started painting portraits for all the guys, and he was terrific. Perfect. Yeah, here's my reunion, September 12th and 13th out in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, if I get there.
Oh, you will.